Welcome everybody to the Mental Health at Work Commitment webinar series. My name is Faye McGuinness. I'm the Head of Workplace Wellbeing Programmes at the mental health charity Mind, coming to you from sunny East London, very sunny today, which is lovely. So this is the third webinar in this series, so really happy that you're joining us today. I'm going to start with the boring housekeeping that we all know so well now. So just to say that we are recording today's session, so please make sure that if you don't want to be on the recording that you turn your camera off, but we are recording and we're going to post these webinars onto the Mental Health at Work website after we've done them live. If I could ask everybody to stay on mute throughout, that would be absolutely fantastic. But I would welcome people putting in questions into the chat function, because we are going to have a question and answer session at the end. So please do take the opportunity to ask any questions that you have, type them into the chat, and then we'll ask as many as we can at the end of the session. So really pleased to be presenting this webinar series in partnership. We're delivering these in partnership with the CIPD, Business in the Community, This Is Me, and the City Mental Health Alliance. And today we're specifically focusing on standard 3, which is how to promote an open culture around mental health. And I'm really pleased that we're presenting this in partnership with our colleagues at the This Is Me campaign, and particularly Robyn, who you can see on the screen. Robyn is a senior program manager for This Is Me and is a personal advocate of all things mental health at work. So absolutely brilliant to have you here. And we've also got Nikki McGowan from UBS, who is their talent specialist. And Nikki is going to bring her expertise and experience of implementing standard and really bring it to life with some practical hints and tips. So really what we hope that you'll have at the end of this session is some really good ideas to take away with you so that you can promote an open culture around mental health in your workplace. So before we get into the kind of practical hints and tips, what I wanted to do is just set the scene for you slightly. So really, why did we launch the Mental Health at Work Commitment, and what is the Mental Health at Work Commitment? So I'm going to start with the what is it. So the Mental Health at Work Commitment, quite simply, is a set of 6 standards. It's a set of 6 standards that we recommend all workplaces implement as the start of prioritising mental health in the work. Standards that have many sub-standards underneath them. This stuff isn't easy, but what it does is it allows you to think about, as an organisation, how you promote well-being for everybody, how you tackle the causes of poor mental health at work, and how you support people that might have mental health problems in the workplace. So a set of 6 standards. And why did we launch this a year ago? Why did we need the Mental Health at Work Commitment? Well, before coronavirus hit, what we knew is that 51% of people felt comfortable speaking generally about mental health in the workplace. So nearly 50% of people still didn't feel comfortable about talking about mental health in work. We know that for those experiencing poor mental health at work, 39% of them had said that work was the cause of that poor mental health. And we also knew before COVID that the cost of poor mental health at work is £45 billion every year to employers. And that £29 billion of that is made up of presenteeism. So actually not people taking off time sick, but people in the workplace not being as productive or engaged as they might be because they're not feeling at their best, or they're not in the right culture that's giving them the support that they need for their mental health. So before COVID hit, I would say that we were already facing a crisis in terms of workplace mental health. But actually what COVID has allowed us to do is to really accelerate our practice in terms of thinking about what good workplace mental health can look like. And so recently the Business in the Community ran their annual Mental Health at Work survey. And I just wanted to share some of the stats from that survey, because actually I think it shows a positive picture in regards to what we were seeing in 2019. So in 2019, as I said, 39% of people said that work was the contributing factor to their poor mental health. Now that's gone up slightly to 41%, but actually that could have gone up a huge amount more if employers hadn't actually provided the right support during this time. So we might have expected to see a much bigger increase, and actually we haven't. We haven't seen a massive increase. 54% of employees have cited poor mental health issues due to causes outside of work, and a third listed COVID as a cause of their symptoms. But then actually, when we look at increased support and willingness to talk about mental health during this time, 63% of employees feel that their organisation supports their mental health, compared to 55% last year. And 56% of employees feel comfortable talking about their mental health in the workplace, compared to 51% last year. So actually, what I think we are seeing is actually the way that employers have responded to supporting mental health and wellbeing during this time has taken some positive steps. And I think we can use this as an opportunity to really think about how we create workplaces for better mental health, and particularly how we promote an open culture around mental health in the workplace. So standard 3 has 3 substandards, and those are increased awareness and stigma being challenged, empowered employees as champions and role models, and opening two-way conversations and providing clear support. And we believe that by doing these 3 things, you can really help promote an open culture around mental health at work. But how can you do that practically? So now I'm going to hand over to Robyn, who's going to share some of her hints and tips and lots more information about how you can do this practically at a workplace. Over to you, Robyn.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Faye. And it's such a pleasure to be here and be part of this webinar series with Mind and the other organisations that you mentioned. So thank you so much for having us. And really great to see so many people on the line today as well, to really look at how we can create that open culture around mental health in the workplace, because we know actually that it's that culture that is really key to underpin a lot of your wider work around mental health as well. So as Faye mentioned, I'm a senior programme manager at the Lord Mayor's Appeal, and I lead our This Is Me initiative. And what I want to do today is give you an introduction into what This Is Me is, but really focus on how the different tools can help you implement Standard 3 and the different substandards that Faye just really greatly introduced for us all. And then after that, really delighted to have Nikki McGowan from UBS to really share a business perspective and give you some more of those really practical tips and hints of what's worked really well for them at UBS that will hopefully inspire and help you as well today. So to start, as a short overview, This Is Me ultimately supports organisations to end the stigma around mental health in the workplace and create healthier and more open and inclusive cultures around mental health to improve employee well-being. So already we can see that it really underpins that Standard 3, which we're looking at today. And just to give a bit of context before I get into the detail, This Is Me originally started within Barclays around 5 years ago and was focused around storytelling and sharing lived experience. And we at the Lord Mayor's Appeal then adopted the programme in 2016 because we really saw the impact that it was having within Barclays to really create that open culture and challenge the stigma around mental health in the workplace. Then if we fast forward 5 years to where we are today, This Is Me is really developed as a comprehensive toolkit of different tools and support for organisations like yourselves to really focus on reducing the stigma, improving employee skills and openness to talking about mental health. And as you can see on the screen, we focus on 3 tools to support organisations to do this in slightly different ways. That's our Green Ribbon campaign, our This Is Me storytelling, and wellbeing in the workplace. So if we look at that first substandard that you shared, Faye, if you're happy to move on to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So the first substandard we're looking at here is increased awareness and stigma being challenged. So within This Is Me, we provide a couple of tools to help you to do that. But what I'm going to focus on here is the first of these, which is our Green Ribbon campaign. And this is really all about supporting organisations to raise awareness of the importance of mental health in the workplace. And how we do that is we run our Green Ribbon campaign during Mental Health Awareness Week and World Mental Health Day to really channel those wider weeks and days of activities to really be able to raise that awareness within our workplaces. And what the Green Ribbon really does, and what it's really about, is creating that visible movement of support. So both externally, when we can see our cities and buildings and businesses lighting green to really promote this, but also, and I think more importantly, internally with your employees to say, you know, we support mental health, we're committed to this, we're open to talking about mental health. And really saying to those that might be struggling, you know, it's okay not to be okay. And we are demonstrating this by wearing our green ribbons, doing activity, and sort of turning our workplaces green. So this is usually, we encourage employees and organisations to encourage their employees to wear green ribbons, to do a range of different activities to get people talking. And this year, because of COVID, what we did is translated the Green Ribbon campaign online, so that whilst we may be apart physically, we wanted to really still demonstrate that we can be together online, create that community, create that impetus to say that, you know, whilst we're in slightly different boats, we're all in the same storm under COVID and other external environments that we're facing. And we provide a range of assets and supports to help you do that. So you can see on the slide, we've got some snapshots of our guide that helps you think about how you might do the Green Ribbon campaign in your workplace. We provide social media cover photos and virtual green ribbons to really help turn social media green, and a range of other tools so that you can think what would work best in our workplace to really get people talking and raise awareness about that. And you're really joining a great community of businesses and organisations doing this. And we've been really delighted this year that the Green Ribbon, the virtual Green Ribbon, has travelled to over 73 cities across the UK. So that means that workplaces in 73 cities are wearing the Green Ribbon, sharing it with their employees, and using it as a starting point to raise that awareness and have those conversations. And we've also really delighted that we saw the Green Ribbon travel to 16 cities internationally this year as well. So it's a really great way to think about how can you build your sort of regional and international offices as part of creating that culture. Because we know that it might be one thing to be able to bring our full selves to work in London, but because we work so internationally and regionally as well, we want to encourage people to be able to do that no matter who they're working with, no matter if it's their colleague in India or their colleague in Scotland, for example. So that's really what we try to focus on in terms of raising that awareness and supporting organisations to do that, to really start to reduce that stigma, to say we're talking about it, it's okay not to be okay. And then this also links with one of our other tools, which also really helps to achieve substandard 2. If we just remind ourselves of what that is. Faye, if you're happy to move that forward, that's great. So that's substandard 2 really links nicely to substandard 1 around empowering employees as champions and role models. And we know that this is a really key way to reduce stigma as well. And so what we support organisations to do is encourage their employees to share their lived experience of mental health, to really continue to open up the conversation, to dispel those myths and challenge those stereotypes that unfortunately we still too often see associated with mental health, whether that's as simple as who has mental health, which of course that's all of us, and who it is that might have mental health problems throughout their life. And again, that's likely to be all of us, whether that's directly or indirectly through supporting a loved one. And so this substandard is really about getting those lived voices into your organisation and into supporting your mental health work. And this can be done in a number of ways. So you may have seen some of our This Is Me films, and we're delighted to show you an example of that a little bit later on. But it also doesn't have to be. So we can share stories in so many different ways. That could be part of a blog, if you have one of those within your organisations, sharing stories on your intranet. And it can also be as simple as sharing stories about how we're all doing in our team meetings, or even just a one-to-one conversation, whether that's with your manager or a colleague at work. And I think often people think, oh, I don't have anything to share. You know, I don't have this really big, inspiring story to share. But what we find actually is that everyone has a story to share. And especially now, as Faye was mentioning earlier, with COVID, we're all experiencing challenges that we might not have faced before. So we all have something to share about maybe what we've been finding challenging, but also what has really helped us as well. And what that vulnerability does is says to other people, it's okay to be struggling, that's fine. And that really encourages other people to open up and share their stories as well. And we know that this is a really key part of both these substandards 1 and 2, because by people sharing their stories, that stigma is reduced, and it really encourages other people to come forward and share their experiences as well. And we know that this looks a little bit different with COVID now, and I know that we're going to have time to speak to Nikki about how they've adapted their work through to COVID. So I won't go into that into too much detail now. But again, we've got a range of films that you can use in your workplace to help start those conversations. And we've also got a toolkit that if you register for This Is Me, it really helps you start thinking about how could you create your own storytelling campaign that would be appropriate for your organization, and gives you some tips and hints about how to do that, because of course it won't happen overnight and there's some work that needs to go into it, but it's incredibly valuable to have those lived voices and those employee champions that are really pushing forward your mental health agenda as well, and really giving it that legitimacy within your business. So thirdly, if we remind ourselves of the substandard 3, which is around having open two-way conversations, which of course links really nicely to what we were saying about sharing your experience, and also having clear support and directing your employees to that as well. And we know that for organisations, once you've raised awareness and you're opening up that conversation and you're really reducing that stigma, that often the next hurdle can be encouraging people to talk and feeling confident to talk about mental health and to build their skills to do so. So what we have done is worked in partnership with Samaritans to develop an online e-learning tool, which all of this is free to use, called Wellbeing in the Workplace. And what that looks at is really bringing Samaritans' expertise around active listening and supporting mental health into the workplace. And it's a 2-hour training, which you can dip in and out to, so it's really flexible. And it really helps to build those skills about how to approach somebody who you might think is struggling, whether that's a colleague or one of your line reports or direct reports. But also how we can be more aware about some of the signs that might tell us that somebody's not doing so well, or that we ourselves might not be doing as well as we thought. And it also has a really great range of resources that you can use to start those conversations with your team as well, as part of a team meeting, or even with a few individuals, to really help people feel more confident talking about mental health. So we often find that, maybe managers might think, oh, I'm worried about making the situation worse. I don't know about this potential mental health problem or condition. Do I have to diagnose the person? I'm just a bit nervous. Of course, none of that is true. And in fact, we would encourage people not to try and diagnose someone unless you're a mental health professional. But what this is really about is we will very rarely make the situation worse, but by having some tools and having an ability to practice role modeling some of those conversations, we can be much more confident to reaching out to people, because we know by reaching out, that's the first step. And often listening to somebody is exactly the support they need. Obviously it's an old saying, but a problem shared is a problem half, but we really do see the impact that can have. And this is what wellbeing in the workplace is really all about. So if we're looking at This Is Me, it's a toolkit. It's different tools depending on the different areas that you want to focus on. And you don't have to do them all together. Often we see it's a step-by-step approach to really look at using all 3 of them to build a continuously open culture around mental health. And just to provide a bit of context, since we launched, we've got almost 1,000 businesses registered for This Is Me, and we also have regional groups and hubs in the West Midlands, in Scotland, in the Northwest, in Yorkshire, and in India. So you've got a really great network of businesses and organisations who are already doing this across the UK that can really support you as well through This Is Me to do this. But I think what's important, and what I wanted just to touch on now, is these tools are really helpful. And of course, it's fantastic to have so many businesses and organizations on board. But some of you may be thinking, oh, okay, this is great, but does it work? If we did all this, if we focus on these areas, what change are we going to see? And what I wanted just to share is that we know it does work, and we know that because we work with our This Is Me organisations to measure the impact of the campaign and measure the change that businesses are seeing in their workplace as a result of this. So you can see on the screen a couple of statistics here, and this is from our 2019 annual survey. And we found that 94% of organisations who had done This Is Me said their employees' awareness of mental health had increased. So really looking at that first step, that by using these tools, employees are more aware, they're more plugged into what you're doing across the organisation. Just picking out a couple of here, there, we also 80% of organisations said their employees were more confident talking about mental health. And a result, 86% of people said more people talk about mental health in that workplace. And that's really key to challenging that stigma and having employees empowered to have those two-way conversations and to be champions for mental health in your workplace. And then if we look to the final statistic there, it says 83% of organisations said This Is Me had a really positive impact on reducing the stigma around mental health. And that's as a result of creating that open culture where people feel comfortable talking about it, and it's okay not to be okay, just like it's okay if we don't feel well because we've got an ear infection, for example. But it's not just the direct impact that This Is Me can have in your workplace that we find really exciting. And the same with having that open culture. It's because we know it also has the power to act as a catalyst for wider change across your organisation as a whole. And we measure our This Is Me organisations against these 10 measures, which you can see on the screen, which a lot of these link with the wider standards as well. And we believe that if an organisation is achieving 7 or more of these measures, they're making really tangible and sustainable change around how their organisation is both thinking and also acting around mental health. And when we looked at our This Is Me organisations, before they've done any activity under This Is Me, about 28% of them were achieving 7 or more of these standards. Then when we went back to the same businesses and asked them again after their This Is Me activities, and this was in 2019, this rose to 87% of those organisations were now achieving 7 or more of these measures. And that's why, of course, we're slightly biased, but this standard around creating that open culture is so important, because without that foundation, it makes your wider work around mental health much harder to really embed and make sustainable across your business. So that's why we really champion This Is Me. This is why we champion these tools. And this is what the impact that we would love to see brought about in your businesses and organisations this year as well. And just before I hand over to looking at an example of one of our This Is Me films, I just wanted to share a little bit of the support that we can offer you, because I appreciate, this isn't going to happen overnight. This is a journey, and it can be tough, to do, especially to do cultural pieces here. So I just want to reassure you, it's not a journey that you're in alone. Our team at the Lord Mayor's Appeal obviously mind and the commitment. We're here to help you to do that. So the first step would be to register on our website, which is thelordmayorsappeal.org. Once you register, you will get access to our step-by-step guide, which really helps you to start thinking about how to create that environment within your workplace that's receptive to storytelling. It helps you think about how you could plan and communicate your own green ribbon campaign in your workplace, and also how to really embed well-being in the workplace in your organisation to help your employees and managers have the skills that they need. Alongside that, we run a range of events as well, webinar series like this one, to really help you with some of those practical tips around how to encourage people to share their stories. How do you actually create a This Is Me film if you would like to? And that also brings together the best practice and what we've learned over the last 5 years. And I think for us, that's one of the most powerful aspects of the campaign is that it's really been driven by business, and we really want to create a community of businesses and organisations supporting one another, and that's why we have a range of steering groups of businesses to help you do so across the UK. So no matter where you're based, no matter what size of business you are, no matter what sector you're in, these tools are relevant and applicable to you, and we are here to help. So I hopefully look forward to hearing from some of you after this webinar as well, and having some further conversations. But I think the best way to really see what This Is Me is all about, and how powerful it can be, is to show you an example of a This Is Me film, which is UBS's third This Is Me film that they have created. And this was actually filmed during lockdown, so slightly differently to what UBS has done before. And then after that, I can't wait to speak to Nikki and hear more about their experience from their side. So I'll hand over to Faye, who hopefully will be able to share the film for us. Thank you, Faye.
I'm Heather, and I work in operational risk within group operations.
I'm David Soames. I work in the investment bank. I also have a job with the group.
Hi, my name is Leslie Coombs. I work in IB Cork.
Hi, my name's Mark Eardley. I'm the product manager for UBS Bondport.
Outside of work, I love spending time with my family and friends, and as much time as I can out in the countryside.
I'm married and have a 3-year-old son. In terms of hobbies, I love theatre. So I really missed that during this COVID.
I'm 41 years of age. I'm married to my lovely wife Kristen, and we have 2 children. My main hobbies are really all around keeping fit. I love to run, swim and bike.
I live in London, West London. I have 3 daughters. I have a wife, and a cat and a dog. I play a bit of bridge, and I occasionally sing in a choir.
My father passed away in March from leukemia. It was just when we started to work from home, and having my son home while trying to work, not being able to go see my mom and be with her, or being able to prepare for a funeral. Somebody
very, very close to me had a terrible mental health crisis. It started really a long time ago, and it sort of developed into a life-threatening eating disorder.
Earlier this year I was diagnosed with a stress and anxiety disorder. There have been a lot of things going on in my life, not only in work but personally. My father was just coming to the end of a 10-year battle with Alzheimer's disease, and just was starting to question the whole meaning of life.
Mental health has been a huge focus for me since starting a family. When my son was born a number of years ago, I was diagnosed with postnatal depression. A really hard and overwhelming time for me, but something, with the help of a doctor and family, I managed to get through before returning to work after maternity leave. This year, mental health has continued to be a focus for me. In our quest to expand our family, we've been through multiple miscarriages, one of which happened during lockdown.
I think there's a tendency definitely for me to say, oh, I'm fine, everything's okay, even when that's not necessarily the case. And one time in particular, someone asking me, how are you really doing? Finding myself in tears at that question. And then I think it was to the point where I was sitting in front of my desk and could not stop crying. And then I think also even for myself, like feeling of I just don't want to even eat at the moment. So through the help of the mental health champions, I also spoke to my line manager and told them how I was feeling, and we started to make a plan for, helping me through this time.
When I realised that I had a problem, the first thing I did was speak to my wife and explain to her how I felt. And she was, brilliant and encouraged me to basically reach out to work and to my manager. I could look to focus on myself and getting better again. And I did that by, using the UBS mental health scheme to be put in touch with a CBT therapist who basically helped me to work through my problems and just to not be scared of them anymore.
There were two key events in this illness. The first was that we didn't notice. Each day looked like the day before. The second time was during all the help that we had, and UBS was very helpful, talking about it to 2 or 3 colleagues. We realised when the doctor running the case said, "Look, I can't handle this. I need help. We need someone else." And moving the case from the doctor to someone else was a key moment in beating this illness.
Infertility is something that impacts 1 in 6 couples across the UK. Not talking about it, trying to get back to work, and feeling isolated during lockdown meant that a couple of months down the line, I realised that I wasn't coping too well. I was able to take some time off work that I had booked anyway, and I was able to focus on myself and start processing things and start working with a counsellor.
I wanted to participate in the This Is Me campaign just to help to raise awareness around mental health, especially in men of 40 years plus. I just want people to know that it's fine to reach out. It's not a indication of weakness, it's actually an indication of strength.
I'm taking part in this film because when the first time I saw This Is Me, it was massively impressive. I thought it was hugely important step forward in the way that we talk about mental health. I think all the things that UBS are doing is really creating a tremendous environment for us to make sure that these issues are out in the open, and in the open they can be dealt with.
It's amazing to me that that we often have a tendency to feel like we're all alone in this, and you're not. And I encourage you to use the resources that are available.
It's only in speaking about mental health as much as we can that we can normalise the conversation around it and hopefully help others who are also suffering.
I'm Leslie, and this is me.
I'm Mark, and this is me.
I'm David, and this is me.
I'm Heather, and this is me.
Thank you for sharing that, Robyn and UBS. I mean, I honestly, whenever I watch those videos, I just get lots of emotions for many different reasons, but it's actually really important to have examples like that to bring it to life, and people that have that lived experience to actually bring that into these webinars and into the room. It's so important to share that. So thank you, brilliant to see. I'm going to hand back now to you, Robyn. So you're going to have a conversation with Nikki and just really hear from UBS actually about how they've done some of this stuff, and share some practical hints and tips for everybody listening.
Great, thank you so much, Faye, and Nikki, thank you for being with us as well, and for that fantastic film as well. And UBS have done so much fantastic activity around This Is Me, and over the last 3 or 4 years. So really appreciate the opportunity to really delve in and get your experience and your knowledge there as well. So I guess to start us off, if you're thinking about your experience over the last sort of 3 or 4 years working on this, what would you say are 3 things that a business could do to get started on promoting an open culture? I think often it's hard to know where to start, and it can feel a bit overwhelming. So if you were to give us 3 things, what would those be?
Definitely. And I think it's always hard to just think of 3 things, because I think there's a long list of things that we can all do. I think for me, we started our mental health network back in 2016, and it was very much like a grassroots approach. So a group of very passionate individuals at UBS actually went to Mental Health Awareness Week in May that was actually run by our Ability Network at the time, and there wasn't a mental health network back then. And there were just so many of us that were like, this is so interesting and so inspiring. I think it was a mental health talk with Johnny Benjamin, actually. I think that might have been what it was. It was a really interesting session, and it was an event. And I think often that's probably the second thing I'd say, actually. First thing I would say, if you can, get a network together, get a group of like-minded employees that are all kind of into the similar ethos in terms of mental health, and come up with a plan on what you want to achieve. And that could just be a really broad mission statement of just trying to make your workplace a more mentally healthy environment, which is what we did. And we came together and we put a network together, and then we got the senior sponsorship. But I think sometimes step one, it's just taking the plunge and doing it. No one's going to tell you to do anything. There's no direction from above. We put it together. It came from the bottom up, and then the senior management were inspired by the events that we're putting on and our mission statements that we were kind of trying to broadcast. We created like an internal, we call it connections, but it's like a social sharing platform within UBS. So I would say that's the main thing. Like, if it's possible in your organisation, to create a network, and then just events. Events and we'll get people to naturally talk about it. I mean, obviously at the time we were all doing in-person events, so it became a little bit more natural just to chat to people, the person next to you in the audience, and speak to people as they came in and out. And people are always so inspired by all these events. So I think events helps, and also kind of signposting to resources that are available, because a lot of people didn't realise that we had an employee assistance programme and lots of resources available in our healthcare scheme. And having like a platform to almost kind of raise awareness of those resources as well. And then finally, I would just say making sure you get representation across the whole organisation. I mean, UBS is a really big global bank, and we just look after the UK, but just trying to get representation within the divisions as well, to get people talking about it a little bit more, and making sure you reach as many aspects as possible, I think, of the organisation, however big or small that is really helpful too, to get people talking, really. Yeah,
that's great, Nikki. And you really kind of picked out some of those substandards along the way there, like the importance of having those employee champions and those voices to really push it forward. And actually, like you said, how that can actually then influence getting that support from a senior level as well, I think is really, really interesting. And I think, really bringing people together, isn't it, and connecting them with those events and providing an opportunity to talk. I think is really important. Obviously slightly different in this year,
but last year as well, we also introduced the mental health champions too, which helped with that, spreading the word a little bit more. In the ethos of the mental health champions, for me, are really important, because they provide a listening ear for someone to talk to about anything. Confidentiality as well is really key for that, but they all got trained by the mental health first aiders, and it's all about active listening and supporting. And signposting as well, really important skills just to get people talking about it and be aware of it. And we all have like the signatures on our email, when we're in the office, we have the physical lanyards as well, which was helpful just to, create that presence as well.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it? How to still create that presence when we're online now as well. I think that's a really great way to do it, having it on.
Now. Email signatures, LinkedIn, or whatever we can do to get the green showing somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And UBS have been so great at that as well, so really big thank you from our side. And I guess, if thinking about what you've just shared, Nikki, and obviously UBS is quite a big business, as you've shared, but if you were to think about some businesses who might be on the call with us at the moment, who might be smaller businesses, what advice would you give to them in terms of a small business context who want to really try to tackle stigma and increase awareness, but maybe don't have as much of the resources behind them to do that?
Yeah, I think with small businesses, where you can, in a similar way, if you can set up a network or a group of people, but I think, again, it's probably, I haven't been in a small business for a while. I've been in UBS for 10 years. But I would have said that it's probably a little bit easy to get that senior management buy-in potentially. So I do think it's quite important to get your managers talking about it, and not just sponsoring it, but actually sharing stories as well, in whatever way they can. And that might be like David Stones in the video. He's our senior sponsor, and he's a head of the country head for UBS, where he was sharing a story about something that's not directly related, but indirectly. And I think it's also about getting them to understand that the impact isn't always on yourself, but other people as well. I think, having said that, it's going to be even better if they can share something that's really personal, just to show that. I think vulnerability is so important, that leaders should show more and more. And I think if leaders can do that and show their vulnerability side, and show it, as Mark said in the video, as a strength and not a weakness, I think it will really encourage people, especially, to be honest, the male part of the organisation, because in a bank we do have quite a lot of men, especially in senior positions. So for me, I do think that we, you know, to try and get the senior leaders to do as much as that as possible, whether it's just an email or a blog post. A video is fantastic, but that might not always happen straight away. But I think what, as David said in the kind of a panel event we held as part of that, part of that launch video, he was inspired by other people sharing their stories. So yeah, the senior leaders are inspired by other people as well, and don't forget that, and don't forget that kind of the power of us, the employees, really. I think that can actually go quite a long way, and that's what I've learned over the past 4 years, and I've really seen that in terms of the culture of EBS as well, and how just going from 4 years when we first started, it was still quite unusual to have events dedicated around mental health. It was always perhaps under another guise or something else, and as soon as we started having those really open and honest conversations, that's when actually I've seen a cultural shift, and I feel like people aren't afraid to talk about it so much now. And I think a lot of it's to do with these events and This Is Me campaign and the senior leadership as well. So I do think it does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic to hear, and I think you're right. People are inspired by other people to share their stories, and we often hear from our smaller businesses who do This Is Me is that they actually use videos like UBS's or Barclays and PwC, whether that's at a sort of a team meeting or an event, to, whilst it's not within their kind of their business, their people sharing, but to start those conversations. And actually on the back of that, often people say, oh, well, actually, you don't know this about me, but X, or you don't know this about me, but this. And so even having other examples for people to see and see that role modeling, that vulnerability.
And I found that as well, because I did the video last year, This Is Me video last year, and I just had people coming up to me and emailing me across the bank and just saying how, you know, and even if that's the thing, even if you just impact one person, someone then doesn't feel so alone. And I think that's the key part of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're, you know, all of us, the statistics speak for themselves, you know, even, you know, on this call where we'll have plenty of us who may have had mental health challenges or may do in future. So none of us are alone, and it's making sure that we feel that we all make sure that we know that. In this
environment where we can feel even more alone and more isolated because we're away from our colleagues, I think. And luckily UBS is really, we've seen a lot more interest from my senior leadership recently, not just in the UK but around the world as well. In terms of wellbeing and mental health, I think businesses are suddenly starting to realise how important it is, which is great. And I think this is why it's been such a success. And we had such success for that launch as well. A couple of weeks ago for World Mental Health Day internally, we had like a panel event as well, and we also were lucky enough to get the EBS choir as well to sing for us This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. So it was a real it was a good marketing campaign from our side, because people always want to watch a choir, right? So it was that really helped as well spread the message. So if you can do that, that's great.
Sorry, Nikki, and I think that links really nicely actually to my last question before we hand over to the wider Q&A from the audience, as I'm sure everyone will have lots of questions for you. But how at UBS do you go about encouraging people to share their stories? You've touched on the bit of the power of seeing other people share. And has this changed for you during COVID-19? Have you seen a shift in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should probably say as well that I co-chair the mental health network, we call internally Headscape, not Headspace, with my colleague Jo Cole. We took over from February actually, and we initially wanted to do a new This Is Me video for May, for Mental Health Awareness Week, and then COVID happened and it kind of just, you know, everything was going a little bit, you know, we had lots going on, we had lots of people coming to us, wanting to do events as well, so it was a lot of interest, but we were a little bit unsure how we were going to do the video remotely. So we were kind of thinking, let's put it on hold, but we were really keen to do a video this year because it's such an important topic that we found this year and everyone seemed really interested in it. So actually what we thought we'd do a little bit of a campaign, which we hadn't done in the past. In the past we've just sent like we have like a weekly newsletter, and there's been a line in there to say, do you want to be part of This Is Me? And we've managed to get each year enough people to get involved. We're also really aware of other events going on as well, not only the pandemic, but the tragedy with George Floyd that happened as well, and like everything else going on in the US as well. And you know, we wanted to make sure we got that kind of, we wanted to go out to all the networks as well. So the Mosaic network as well for our BAME employees, the Cultural Awareness Network. We wanted to make sure we had good representation across UBS and that everyone had a chance to be involved in it, because we really think a lot of people would have their kind of stories to share. So, I mean, internally, I created like an internal page again, and on there we had like all of the previous stories from before, but also I did a bit of a video just explaining why I did a video before. So just saying, you know, why it was important, what I got from it, and how it helped others as well. And a couple of colleagues did the same. So we created a bit of a campaign around getting people to share, which was good because we got a lot of interest to begin with. What I will say is that the interest, we had a few people drop out because we asked them to film that themselves. And I think without having the you know, a room booked, and we, you know, we're lucky to have a TV team at UBS as well, but we've got that group of people as well in that room. I think people on their own, they often were like, actually, I don't think I'm ready to do this now, which is absolutely fine. But without that kind of almost added pressure, if you like, of a room and a filming equipment, we did have a few people that didn't go ahead with the video. So, but I'm really happy with the end result. I think it works really well. I think resource-wise as well, there was a lot of editing that had to be done. From my side, I probably underestimated the time and resource behind that too. But it was fine because it was, you know, I managed to work around my day job, but it's just something to bear in mind. And like I say, UBS has a media team, so we were lucky to have that, but I still had to do all the editing and tell them what they needed to edit and how to cut it together. So yeah. Lots of things like that. And another thing we did, one final thing, is just to say, we actually told, like we said, what are the 5 kind of main reasons of how, what are the benefits for them to take part in This Is Me, that we pulled together as part of the campaign. So you could influence the culture of UBS, you could change lives, even if you just impact one person. You're being your authentic self, you're being vulnerable, and also it's just a really good practice to talk and share in a conversation. So yeah, there were some tips for this strange time that we've just been through, but we're really happy with the end result. It just took a little bit longer than it normally does.
Great, thank you so much, Nikki. We could carry on forever, I think, talking about this. It's very interesting, but I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions that they'd love to ask you or ask us. So I will hand back to Faye, but thank you so much, Nikki. Really appreciate your time.
Brilliant, yeah, I agree. I mean, amazing to hear the work of UBS and where you sort of started from and where you are now. It's a journey, you know, we don't expect anyone to basically have it done perfectly. You know, we don't have it perfect at mind, you know, it's a journey for everybody. So great to hear that. So I'm going to invite my colleague Ewan, who has been keeping an eye on the chat for us, and he is going to direct questions to us to answer. So over to you, Ewan.
Oh yes, thank you. Hello from York. I always feel a bit like a Eurovision person dialing in, saying thank you for putting on a great show for us this evening. Here are the results from the chat room. We've had quite a few actually. So some, we'll start with ones maybe more directed at Nikki, but then there are some that maybe everybody might comment on. So have UBS conducted any evaluation work that might evidence the business case for investing in internal mental health initiatives?
I think
we're going to unmute you.
Apologies.
I'm not used to Zoom. I muted myself. I didn't realise I couldn't unmute myself. Could you repeat the question, please? Apologies.
Yes. Did you conduct any evaluation work that might provide evidence for the business case for investing in internal mental health initiatives?
No.
Good answer.
That one. Like I say, it was very much bottom-up approach, and we kind of thought that, I mean, it's not my day job. And we're doing it out of passion. But having said that, I think, like I said before, lots of stuff going on now globally where they've actually created they're working on now, creating a global mental health strategy where I'm sure they'll look into all those aspects. But for me, it was just about what do we want to achieve? And I guess the main mission was just to make people aware of our resources, feel like they can be open about having a conversation about mental health, and that's where the mental health champions came in, and also promoting it as much as possible with events. So that's kind of our mission and our statement that we do, but no other kind of research behind it.
So it seems very much about just deciding that this is the right thing to do, this is going to reflect who we are, and that's why we want to do it.
Yeah.
And just to come in, Philip made a really good point in the chat that Deloitte did some very interesting analysis, and what that showed is on average if you spend £1 in this area, you get a £5 return on investment. That can go up to £9. And actually what the report showed is at the higher end of that £9 is the wider culture change activity piece that you carry out. So actually the return on investment in that area is higher than individual interventions. So I think it's really interesting to kind of know that. And I'll pop a link to that report in the chat so people can view that.
Yeah, that's a great stat. I've seen that report. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. So another one probably for Nikki, I think. How did you approach people's privacy? Did the people in the videos worry about exposing their thoughts to the whole internet, or was it purely for internal eyes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's why we did a bit of a campaign around it, because we were obviously concerned. I think me personally, when I did the video, I didn't actually put my hand up for it. I was approached by someone that knew about my story, and I thought, oh, maybe I should share it, because I think people often, and I had a lot of conversations with people thinking about sharing, and they all thought, is it good enough? Is it good enough for a story? And I think that was one of the things we created in this campaign. We created an FAQ document that kind of said, you know, there isn't a right or wrong way. There isn't a good or bad story. Everyone's got their own story to share, and it's just about being open and honest and being your authentic self, and that's what we want to hear. So we put that in the FAQ documents, and also we were really clear in the instructions before they made the video about, you know, what they should include, and, you know, if they're comfortable with it. And I made sure that they saw, you know, versions of the video before we went live, and of course it's public as well, so we had to get everyone's sign off that they were happy with it. But luckily it's all about kind of having that conversations with them and making it really clear from the start, you know. And some people, like I say, weren't ready for that, and that's absolutely fine as well. But having an open ear just to say, do you want to talk anything through? What are your concerns as well is also quite important in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so we have quite a few more and only about 6 minutes left, but I think these are all things that anybody might comment on. So we'll throw them open and see what you think. Aside from a lot of comments about how inspiring the video was, by the way, I should just throw that in. So somebody has asked, do you think that the C-suite should see, do they see mental health as a weakness? And even if they empathise, are they reluctant to change?
I'm happy to start with this one. So I don't think it's an easy yes or no, because I think it varies across different organisations. So I think we've come an incredibly long way over the past 5 years in terms of senior leaders, C-suite, CEOs, directors, actually being much more open about their own mental health. If I think about the CEO of Lloyd's, Antonio, who spoke very, very openly about his mental health, and also speaks about this idea that, you know, we all want to be at our best, we all want to be productive, but we can't be both of those things all of the time. And the only way that we can actually be those things is if we take the time out to look after ourselves and rest and recuperate. So I think that we have come a long way, and there are things that, you know, that have been launched, such as the Inside Out Leadership Board, which is actually a board dedicated to senior leaders and CEOs talking about their mental health. So I think we've come a long way, but I completely recognise that's not the case in all organisations. And so for me, there's something there about how you build what I would call the business case, but that's both the human case and the financial case. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there now that can help you build that, particularly the Deloitte report that I put into the chat. So, you know, I think there is a lot of data and evidence now to suggest why we need to do this, and also how we can do it. And I think those two things have come a long way in the last couple of years. Robyn, I don't know if you had anything to add from your work with many C-suites.
Yeah, I think you captured it really well, Faye. I think there's been a lot of progress, and that there's still progress that is being made and will continue to be made. And I think it was really interesting what Nikki was saying, and what we often find is that This Is Me is often started from employees within the organisation, and they push it forward and take it forward. I think, Nikki, it's one of your colleagues who had said that when she was looking to first do This Is Me, she asked for forgiveness rather than asking for permission. And often what we see often is that when employees take it and be those champions and run with it, then the senior leaders sort of get involved, and then can then be that catalyst to get more senior leaders supporting the campaign. So I think having that senior leadership buying is fantastic, but I think tools like This Is Me and this culture can help bring them along the journey and bring them with you as well. So don't be disheartened or put off if you don't currently have that yet within your organisation.
And I think as well in UBS, there's still a bit of a way to go, and I think we're doing really well in the UK, but we're a global organisation, and I don't think we're at the same level in other regions, to be honest. So I think we've made a lot of progress in the UK, and now I hope with this global initiative it will kind of echo it in different regions as well. But it also does take time, and it takes other, they often have to mirror other leaders that have done similar things.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So I think we'll finish with a couple of really quick ones for Robyn, just because they should be practical to respond to. The first one, quite early on, somebody said the whole "This Is Me" campaign looked fantastic. And is the green ribbon linked to the Mental Health Foundation? Is there's something in common between the logos? And while you're on the microphone, how do they access the 2-hour training?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work closely with the Mental Health Foundation on sort of our respective green ribbon campaigns. And what the green ribbon campaign under This Is Me really focuses on is the workplace specifically, and looking at how you can build activity within the workplace using the sort of End the Stigma green ribbon. And the Mental Health Foundation really focus on getting the wider public and getting individuals involved as well. So we're sort of complementary but slightly different focuses on that, but of course work together to really get that green ribbon out to everyone. On the Wellbeing in the Workplace training, I've popped a link in the chat here which shows you how you can register for This Is Me. Once you do, we send you all the information and a link for you to access that training as well, and then that will then direct you to Samaritan sites where that training is held. So if you follow that link, you should then be able to get directed to everything else under the campaign.
Okay, thank you. Well, shall we hand it over to Faye to close things?
Brilliant. Well, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining today. A big thank you to Robyn and Nikki. It's been absolutely brilliant just to hear your perspectives, give some really good practical ideas, tips. I would recommend everybody signs up to the This Is Me campaign. As a member of the London Steering Group, I can honestly say it's such a fantastic campaign and really is smashing the stigma, as you can see from the stats that Robyn shared. So thank you for joining. For those that are joining the rest of the webinars in this series, we look forward to seeing you on the next one later this week. We are going to be posting these webinars on the Mental Health at Work website, so they will be available for you to view again and to share with your networks and into your organisations as well. But all that's left to say is have a brilliant rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks, Faye.